And once we drop the facade that nothing bad's ever happened to me and I just may have some weird habits, and actually start diving into what's real, that's when we heal. And that's when the whole culture and the society heals, and we stop beating the shit out of women. We stop shooting up schools. We stop drinking ourselves to death. We stop doing all of these things that we quote, claim that we want to stop. But we have to start doing that by addressing the root, as opposed to just seeing who can yell the loudest about the branch.
Hello people, welcome back to the podcast. Please hit that subscribe button if you find this valuable. Communicate with me and Traver in the comment section. This is one hell of a podcast. I absolutely love Traver and his approach, his very caring and daring philosophy, and more than anything, I don't think I've ever gone on a podcast with someone and then a day later search their name and listen to more podcasts on them. Just incredible. This guy is such an inspiration. It feels like I'm at the right time to really interview Traver with the stuff I'm taking on in the men's work capacity. He's doing an incredible amount of work in men's only spaces, teaching men how to feel, teaching men how to get back in tune with their direction and their purpose. I won't be the first person to say this, but it is really evident that men in our current culture in the West are really struggling. We top every negative health statistic there is. We cause so much harm to ourselves and others globally. Like, this is really important stuff, and we have to really get to the root and reconnect to why this is happening. Traver presents an incredible new way of looking at all this stuff and helping men get through and in touch with their pain, and fundamentally help men heal. Fundamentally, that is our job right now as men, and I resonate with Traver's teachings significantly. I think that is our job right now, is to get aware, get raw, get real with the pain that we're causing to ourselves and others. So I'll leave it with that, but thank you for listening to the intro. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Traver Boehm. We discuss some powerful stuff, so if you find it valuable, please let us know. Hit that subscribe button. Would appreciate that so much. Thank you and enjoy. Well, thank you first of all, Traver. It's kind of in the middle of Traver and Trevor. You get that out.
I usually wear a name tag and put like a line above the A, like to make people know it's a strong sound.
Yeah. Is that why you said it so many times in the book? Just to reinforce it. Yours sincerely, yours truly, Traver.
I might have, yeah.
It still didn't get it. I see it still.
Yeah.
What a book, mate! What a book! Like,
thank you.
I started listening when you worked for the call. That was my call to listen, and I'm so happy you read it, because I think it's just incredible when you get that you get the voice of someone who's written it and lived it, and it impacts it greatly, audio wise. But I'm definitely going to buy the copy, because if I love an audiobook, I will definitely buy the copy. But it's changed this conversation for me, because there's so many ways in from that book, and so many just of these kind of headline topics that we can just like dive into. Was that like a big intention of like these, because I got so many like simple real like sentences or something. Let's take be dangerous and not a danger. I'd sit with that for an hour and just understand it and dive into it, and there was so many of those little nuggets. It just was it was digestible, and it speaks to men. This, like, how much response have you got from it? I mean, has much changed since the books? It came out a couple of years ago, right?
Everything's changed. I mean, it came out 3 years ago, and in that 3 years, I think maybe this week. And since that time, I mean, I've built an entire, like, an online membership and There's 15, I think, live groups all over the world of guys meeting. This weekend, tomorrow night, actually, we have our first like free gathering. Anybody in the Uncivilized Nation, come to Denver. We're going to go to a barbecue, and then I'm going to teach a class, and we're going to go for a hike. And then the following weekend, we do our initiation workshop. And it's just turned into, I've got t-shirts and people wearing, see people in airports with my shit. It's crazy, Chris. It's crazy. It came as just an idea. And I'll tell you a quick story. I remember talking to a man who I respected greatly for about 45 minutes. We're on the phone for about 45 minutes about the idea. This is like, I've literally just written this on a napkin. And I gave him the whole spiel. I was like, I think men aren't buying what culture's pushing. I think we're being pushed right in the two directions I described, like the 1950s Marlboro man or the sensitive new age guy. And this was right in the middle of Me Too here in the US. So it was all sensitive new age guy. It was like, men are bad, masculinity's bad, male sexuality's bad, everything about a guy is bad. And so I told him just what I thought. And then he went like completely quiet, which if you've shared something personal and the other person, like, so people listening to this, don't do that. Don't go dead quiet after someone shares something. Because of course my head said, he hates my idea. He thinks this is stupid. I should never have shared it. I should go back to like sticking acupuncture needles in people and teaching kettlebell swings. And he just paused for longer than was comfortable and said, do you have any idea the potential impact this can have on the world and will have on the world? And I kind of then went blank. I went, no, this is just something I'm kind of like fucking around with. He's like, well, get ready for it. Get ready for your life to change in a million ways. And so I hung up the phone, and then here's the true story. I got in bed and I pulled the covers over my head, and I was like, I'm not doing this. There's no way I'm doing this. I don't want my life to change in all those ways. I don't want to deal with criticism and attacks, and even the opposite. I don't want my life, which is very private, to suddenly become very public. And it took me probably a full day of going, you know what? I can't not do this. Whatever happens to me, and again, right, we're right in the middle of Me Too. So it's, if I get canceled, if I get whatever happens, I'm willing to go down that path because I believe in this so much. And I put it out the next day, Chris, and boom, everything. And here I am. I've got a huge framed logo behind me. I'm on a call with you. My life, this is my life now. So yeah, it took off. It landed. And I think guys were ready for something that spoke to them as men. Right? That's the thing. I'm getting flown down to Texas in a couple of weeks to speak to one of the largest military clothing companies on earth, because one guy in the company found the book and said, everything I've heard about masculinity up until this point was this soft, sensitive, yogic, not masculine masculinity. And I don't like it. It doesn't fit. Like, what do I do as a man's man who also wants to be a better man, a kinder man, a more emotionally intelligent man? Where do I go from? I'm not buying this, that like deadlifting and weightlifting is bad. Jiu-jitsu is bad. Shooting guns are bad. Guns are a challenge here in the US, but shooting guns, everything, like eating meat is bad. And he's like, I found your book, and it honored who I am, and then asked me to do something different. And that's why we want you to come down. And I think that's kind of the archetypal reaction that men give me.
Yeah, that's powerful, man, and super inspiring. And it's often the simplicity in that message is what really gets people, because complex ideas and it just kind of gets lost when you're speaking to a lot of people. For me, I'd share a bit about my journey. Like there was you in that instance, and many others that don't relate or lean into the feminine as much, and the yoga and the yin, and really dive into those practices. For me, I did. I was in and out of prison for a year when I was younger. A lot of violence. Only really when I was out in town drinking a lot. and it's expressed in that way. It came out in those situations. And then I went off traveling for a couple of years, and I really felt like, oh, that anger, that aggression, that frustration, that's bad. Get away from that. Like, do the opposite. Go totally in the other direction, and then find peace. Be happy, and that's it. This kind of like idealistic, what we take from sometimes Buddhism is in the East is, and that's where I was in Cambodia for a lot of time. And I went and really, I got into yoga. I studied yoga for a bit, but it was almost an extreme. It's exactly the same, two extremes. And
Right.
Jordan Peterson talks about it's like find the edge, go, and then just come back. And that's what I had to do. And like, this has come at an amazing time for me, because I'm adopting all these principles that are really rooted in the core of who we are, and we are a spectrum of it all. And it's like getting hold of, like, nothing, there's no rules, and we have to carve our own way. But it's also the aggression, the anger, the sadness, the joy, all of it, bring it all, and like channel it and engage with the conscious side to it. And that's your book speaks to that. It's consciousness.
Right. It's about choice.
Mm-hmm.
I do yoga. I have nothing wrong with, I love yoga. I'm an acupuncturist. I think yin is beautiful. Feminine energy is beautiful. You use the word there, though. It's consciously chosen. So I can say to a guy, you are, quote, uncivilized. And what does he do? He's a vegan. He's a feminist. He's a poet. He's a yogi. Beautiful. If it's by conscious choice. If he's doing that because he's afraid of his strength, afraid of his power, afraid of his potency, afraid of his ability to penetrate, then it's not conscious choice. Just like a guy who's all into the other side, who I mentioned, like drives a pickup truck and has a lot of muscles and has guns and loves Rambo. Cool. Is that a conscious choice? Or are you just afraid of feelings? Are you afraid of softness? Are you afraid of the full spectrum, like you spoke? I want to give guys access to the full spectrum and say, experience this, flow in between the two. Now you get to decide. You know who doesn't get to decide? Culture, society, your parents, your trauma, your wounds, your girlfriend, your Instagram followers. That's not going to help you direct your life. And so often with men, we don't realize we have the choice. The choice has never been presented to us with permission. We don't get sat down at 11. It's like, hey, you're about to go through puberty. First of all, you're going to jerk off like 7 times a day for a couple of years. Don't worry about that. That'll go away. It better go away. And you also have some choices you get to make here. You get to decide over the next couple of years, how do you want to exist as a man? Here are some options. Here are some models. Here are some ways that you get to pick from this and pick from that and take this and discard that and design your life and your way of being in the way that serves you, serves your family, serves your community, and serves the world in the highest way. And that's going to look completely different for me than it may be for you, Chris, and for your neighbor, and for 4 other guys listening to this. And I don't ever want to put men in a particular box that says, like, you're not a man if. Fuck that shit. That's just shame at work and culture at work and manipulation at work. I want to say you are a man if you are consciously choosing how to exist in this world. I mean, you're a man no matter what, but you're going to be the kind of man the world needs, has made a conscious choice, even if that conscious choice upsets people, not hurts people, but upsets people. Right? There's certain ways that a lot of us live that aren't conventional, and that feels threatening to a conventional culture. So I don't give a shit. Do it anyway. Live your life. We don't, as men, don't see how much subtle pressure there is on us to live and exist a certain way. And for every woman listening to this, it's like tenfold for them. But it's more insidious and hidden with us. Anytime you see the words real men X, right? Real men eat bacon. Real men love Jesus. Real men stop fights. Real men do yoga, whatever. That's manipulation. Every man's a real man. What do you mean? I don't eat bacon, so I'm not, what am I, a fake man? Shit, do I need to go back to bed and like hope that I wake up real? No, it's that, just that term itself lends into, there's an agenda behind it. There's always an agenda behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm hoping men do is cruise through or penetrate through that agenda and start to do what you did, which is, I need to go do some exploration. I want to do yoga for a bit. I'm going to kickbox for a bit. I'm going to meditate for a bit. I'm going to do some plant medicine. I'm going to get sober, right? I'm going to try the world. I'm going to explore and then get out into the world and then decide, you know what? I really like being vegan. Plant medicine wasn't my thing. Meditation, cool, but you know what? I like writing better. Like that to me is a healthy man. It's not the ingredients, it's the conscious choice behind the ingredients, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it does sometimes get tricky, because I felt like I made a conscious choice not to be like my father. Like, and that was for me, what I've understood is I didn't want to be like him for the anger that he held, the way he spoke to me, the lack of openness, the unable to be met with another opinion and listen, and like those things that I deemed negative, I shut away, and I felt like I don't want to be like that. So off I go. Shadow comes in and has demonized and has almost blamed, shamed those aspects of him, which of course are in us all. And if we don't understand that, then we'll live our lives like, we do this, we go through life, I don't want to be like that person, look at them doing that, and we haven't, the context isn't there, so we just shame these things. And that's where something like the shadow can be so pivotal for people to understand, that how to alchemize these emotions that are in us all, right?
Yeah, and it's a journey, brother. I think we need to say that it's okay if your initial reaction to abuse is, or what feels like abuse is, I don't ever want to be like that. But as we mature and we age and we engage with the energy of that, the anger, right, or whatever you felt from your father, first it is good to get away from it. It is good to say, okay, I don't want to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then time comes in and says, well, what about him was actually really good? Or why was he the way he was? Or how have I overcompensated? So here I had an angry father. So now I can't speak up. I don't have a voice, because the only way I knew how to have a voice was screaming. And then somewhere in the middle is where we end up. And anybody listening to this, and myself included, who said, I just don't want to end up like my father. I got 50 American dollars that says at some point you're going to end up like your father. Right. No matter what, it's how many people say, like, I don't want to, how many of us have had exact sentences that we swore we'd never say, like, come out of our mouths in anger or in something, and be like, oh shit. Okay. Well, now I need to learn to find that middle ground, or to alchemize what I went through. How can I take that experience and use it for good? Or how can I take that experience and use it for artistic expression or some other way to get it out, as opposed to just pretend that it's not there and avoid it?
Yeah. And know that it's not the emotion that's bad. It's how it's engaged with, right? How you allow it to be in control, or be in control of it, and yeah, channel it. Like, I'm fresh from a men's weekend that I in a way I wanted this conversation before, because I was like ready with all my kind of questions, but it was absolutely incredible. And I'll be speaking to this on many podcasts. I literally couldn't have asked for it to be, or have gone any I say better, but obviously there was room for other things, and feedback is always welcome. But and there's things I would change and shift. Like, I didn't kind of want it to just be all positive. It's not. There's always room for, and that's what keeps us humble. That's what keeps us growing, learning, and being open. But it literally was like everything and more. And of course the surprise is there, because it's the first time I've held this space for a longer time. And everything the men brought was it was just so profound. Like, the depths that we went, by day 2, we were, if someone was, sharing something emotional, and everyone would feel it immediately, and be on board with them, and really honor them in that pain, in that anger, or whatever came up for them. And not try and fix it. You know, the environment was there for that. And I had Jeff Shub come, and he was in the country as well. Do you know him? Follow him?
I don't.
It's called the Urban Barefoot on
Oh, yeah. I do know him. Yeah.
he's friends with like Foot Collective and stuff, and those
Okay.
guys. But yeah, he just came, and we'd never met before, but I trusted this
Mm,
this intuitive sense, because I did some coaching with him last year. Like he was coaching me, and through a lot of anger and
mm,
lots of interesting exercises that we delved into, and he came, and of course, as you know, someone coming in maybe halfway into a weekend where everyone's enveloped and
mhm.
trusted and shared so much was a bit of a gamble, but it really paid off. But I think
Beautiful.
the main thing that really came up, and I'd love to speak to you about, is that these men that came, I think the biggest thing for them was not knowing that there was another way, not knowing that
Mhm.
there was the emotional body that needs, like just what we're speaking to, that needs nurturing, that needs understanding, like
Right.
typical of our generation, and maybe many before that, we just haven't learned, and there's been no
Mhm.
understanding of where these energies come from, and then what to do with them when they do arise, and
Mm,
and what they really signal to us and what they mean, you know.
mhm. Yeah, we're at a place where the information that is coming, once you know it, you can't unknow it. Right. And I know that may sound fluffy, but the first time I did jujitsu, it completely changed my life because I had a traditional martial arts background going in. I had a black belt in another style, and I go to a first jujitsu class and I just get my ass handed to me by everybody, by men, by women, by young people, by people bigger, smaller. Jujitsu kicked my ass. And that day I realized, oh, I will never be the same as I was yesterday because I can't pretend that I don't know that this exists. So it's a new iteration, a new evolution of being. For a lot of men, we just don't know. Like literally, I just had no idea this concept existed. When I ended up getting divorced and starting to go to therapy and then diving into this work, it was the same. It's the same as that first jujitsu class, sitting in a men's circle for the first time and literally being furious that I was 40 years old and no one had taught this to me 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, wait a minute, why did it take all of this loss for me to end up sitting here and going, wow, I feel more full, even though I'm in the midst of heartbreak, than I ever have in my entire life, because I'm not viewing these 8 men as my enemies or my competition or people who are going to hurt me. They're not a threat. They were friends. They were brothers. It was this energy flowing through my body of actual safety and belonging for the first time. People said, thank you for sharing when I cried, which is not most dudes' normal experience growing up. Right. I get a bunch of guys together at 12, 13, and one of them cries. The other guys don't sit down and go like, wow, that was really brave of you. Thank you. They punch him in the arm and they call him a pussy and they tell him to man up and they yada, yada. So to have an outpouring of expression, which was in me, I was in the middle of a divorce, right? I'm in the middle of heartbreak. And to have guys say, wow, that was really brave. Thank you. You just gave me permission to feel a bit more into the depths of my own grief. And then to think, wow, when they're doing it, when they're talking about their anger, their sadness, their grief, their frustration, their rage, their disappointments, their failings, and I'm having all of these feelings too, they're helping me unlock stuff that's trapped in myself. I had no choice but at the end of that experience to walk up and say the exact same thing and say, wow, thank you so much for that. If you weren't willing to go there, I couldn't go there watching you or witnessing you. And so it is. And I trust me, I run these same workshops and run these same gatherings and almost have to temper myself at the end when guys come up and just say, I can't believe this. This is like nothing I've ever experienced. And I'm like, I know. And it's, at this point, I've heard it so many times. I want to be like, I know. It's like taking someone who's lived on McDonald's their whole life and saying like, hey, here's a salad and it's made from real ingredients. Like if you leave
That
your salad,
happens. That
right?
happened.
Right.
That actually happened. This guy
real
came.
food tastes like.
He'd never had an avocado. He'd never had salad, and I put some sliced apple in some salad, and he was just like he you know, the energy was, it was safe for him to just go all in on it. If he'd have reached for that at another space, it would have been laughed at. Like,
Right.
and he had the whole bowl, and it was like, yeah, great, just go with your instincts and just do what you want to do. And he was like, how I didn't even know this food existed.
I didn't know it existed. I think that's what the core of my work right now. And we were talking about the book. The book was written and designed in a way that it would be palatable, that a guy would walk by and be like, wait a minute, a gorilla on the cover? This is a book about masculinity, and there's no big fancy title on the back. There's a Buddha. This is fucking weird. Let me leaf it open. Oh, there's a simple like 1-page thing to read. I can read that. I just wanted to eliminate every barrier of entry, so that, because once the guy's had a salad with a little apple and some avocado, he can't go back to living and eating the way he was before. So I say to you guys listening, once you actually experience safety, trust, emotional expression, which all add up to freedom, which is what men crave in our fucking core, you can't go back. Right? I've had people actually write me and say, fuck you for writing this book. Now I have to live it a different way. Just like I kind of felt the night of my first jiu-jitsu class. I was like, God damn it. Now I need to spend the rest, like 15 years of my life learning this art. It's going to screw up my ears. It's going to cost me money. I'm going to get injured. I'm going to have like sweaty guys pressing on my face for the next fight. It's like surfing, same thing.
Yeah.
It's like first time I stood up on a surfboard, it was like, well, now I'm kind of fucked. Now I can only live certain places, you know? So I invite men listening to this, like, trust us, both of us, take this ride. It will literally change your life in 1,000 ways for the better, but it will also cost you letting go of your unconsciousness, letting go of all the ways you're soothing yourself and numbing yourself and hiding from yourself and not showing up fully as a man.
After experiencing such a safe space, just being you and not hiding any sort of areas or aspects of it, of your persona, although often the persona is the thing that we want to personify, right? So it's the thing that we want to be seen and we like about ourselves. But yeah, this weekend, and as a lot of these spaces, you can just be, and it is tapping into that. But then the integration point when you do next day, I think I'm going to make a note of making sure people do book a few days off. It's like a ceremony, right? It's like a journey in any kind of in any area, whether it's plant medicine or going off and diving back into, let's say, civilized world after you experience the uncivilized way. Like that integration, I was really trying to and doing my best to give credence to. This is the biggest thing. It's all well and good to come to these spaces where you're guided somewhat. There's a certain framework to be and to honor, but then we'll go back and no one can relate in our normal day to day. So what's that like for you in speaking to guys who are then go back into their normal day to day where they don't always feel safe? There's lots going on, there's triggers, there's a myriad of different things to face, but they've had this experience and they can't see it another way.
Chris, we have to talk about initiation, and that's what a weekend like this is like. Plant medicine is like an awakening, is like the first time you have sex, is like my first jiu-jitsu class. These were initiations, meaning it's a passageway from one way of existing into another way of existing. And usually it comes with, if you read any of Francis Weller's work, he talks about this. He describes an initiation as a controlled death. Controlled death, meaning the man you walked into that gathering on Thursday has died. The man who is emerging on Monday is a different man because he can't exist in the same body, system, thought process as the man who was there Thursday. Now, as Francis says, the completion of an initiation only happens when you are re-welcomed into a society by other initiated people. So I may go on this journey, but if I come home to the uninitiated, to people who are like, men and feelings, that's stupid, man up, right? Or like, hey, why are you wearing a purple shirt? Are you a dude? Right? That's the uninitiated world. So my advice to these men is you have to stay in touch with other people who have gone through the process, right? It's just no different for if you ever talk to like military veterans or anybody who's been to combat, and I have not, but I know those men, and they come home and there's no one who understands them, no one who gets them, right? I could read 5,000 books on combat. I could study it and study it and study it, and I will never know what it's like. So I can't talk to that man the same way a guy who spent 2 weeks in combat 20 years ago can, because he's been initiated. So it really brings up the value of community at that point, right? So I have a community, the Uncivilized Nation, specifically because it was the answer to the question, hey, I've just read your book. I love it. I'm starting to do the work. I live in Ohio. Nobody around me likes this stuff. The guys in my police precinct make fun of me for meditating. Where do I go to get some camaraderie? And I hadn't studied initiation at that point. I didn't understand Francis's schematic of initiation. But it's like, all right, we need a group where guys can come in and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And have another guy say, oh, I've been there. You're going to be okay. Trust me. Hey, actually, let's get on the phone. I've been divorced. I know what it's like. I've lost a child. I know what it's like. I've experienced this kind of trauma. I know what it's like. Let me share and just tell you that you have a brother who knows who you are. Right? Let me witness you. Let me bear witness to you. Let me just let you know that you're not alone in the world, because I've been where you are. And so I've been in your body. So that's what I tell these men. Like just like, if we want to talk about ayahuasca or plant medicine, the first thing I tell people is doing it is like, don't talk about it on Monday, because you're going to come out of this experience with all of these revelations and ideas and concepts, and your mind's going to be blown. And you're going to get around people who are like, that makes no sense. Stop talking about it. Or, ooh, look at you, Mr. Spiritual. Ooh, look at you, Mr. Went to a men's weekend. And these things they're sacred to you, right? They're sacred. They have meaning to you. They have a deep meaning. You've been touched in a very particular way, that if someone shames you for that or makes fun of you for that, it hurts, it wounds you very deeply. So be careful with whom you share this stuff. I talk about, I speak a lot about martial arts and say, black belts usually have to confer and be friends with other black belts, because they're the only people who get each other, right? So I think it's even more important with men's work to be consciously cautious of who you're sharing this stuff with. Not to say like, hey, brother, I see you're struggling. I did this thing this weekend. I think it may help you. But it's not appropriate, and it's going to hurt you to come back and, share all of your feelings and experience with people who don't have the capacity to hold that for you.
Yeah. I think that's
a biggie, right?
Yeah.
If we talk to men, we say, hey, this weekend you learned to take 250 pounds of emotion and hold it over your head. That's what we taught you to do. Now on Monday, if you come back to the office and you take that 250 pounds and you throw it at another guy who doesn't have the capacity to hold it over his head, it's going to crush him.
Yeah, it's unfair.
Right? It's unfair, and it's irresponsible. And I don't want to shame guys who are like super excited about this stuff. It's like, go tell people.
Think this is landing so much.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's just who do you share it with? I think it's just really important, because I don't want the guy at the workshop or the guy who's done plant medicine or the guy who's taken his first jiu-jitsu class. to get hurt and then close down and not want to continue on the path, because the path is his life's work and the path is the most important thing for him.
Yeah, one of the guys on the weekend was sharing that because support is huge moving forward, and I don't know if that would even get the recognition if that was, you know, on the page on the website. It's like, well, do I need that? I don't even know what this is about, really. That doesn't speak to me, so I get support after. It doesn't mean anything until it happens, and then it's important to them. But one of them was sharing that they were reversing their huge work vehicle down this road, and we all, as men, we can relate to this, right? And then all the colleagues are like, oh, you're a woman, my wife drives better. And it's like, what to do in those moments where it's like, I've not had this for like 3 days. Like now I know what it used to feel like, but can I use the tools, the practices to just sit with that and know not to personalize it? It's about them, not me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just that was a big one, to be honest. But
Yeah.
encouraging people to share these moments and these highs and what doesn't work when you come out as well, because it's speaking to it. Let's so the Marlboro Man, is that from the cigarette company? Is this sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just to put that in context. So you talk in the book, like, we have this epidemic, you know, males are facing in the West largely, this epidemic of men. Like, what is that for you, and when did that first like really land for you? And that was the understanding this new paradigm needs to come about. So from the Marlboro Man to the S.N.A.G, the sensitive new age guy. And they're both in me as well. I feel like when we talk about our needs, the Marlboro guy, like, I'll do it on my own, I don't need anyone. And then the needy guy who's like, oh, I don't want to be the needy guy. But even in that, and acknowledging I don't want to be the needy one is actually being a nice guy, but you're trying to avoid the neediness that you have a perception of, which is a nice guy.
Yeah. You know, it came about when I just looked at the male situation, let's call it. And a lot of it was looking at media, and a lot of it was looking at media I grew up with. And I'm 46. So I grew up here in the States with Rambo, with Commando, with like movie characters who were, and the Marlboro Man, who, for people who don't know, was this stoic figure on the Marlboro cigarette ad. He was a cowboy, hat down, face kind of shadowed, smoking, alone. And it was just this iconic image of the lone wolf male, the guy who didn't share his feelings, the guy who didn't have feelings, the guy who didn't need anybody, the guy who definitely wasn't looking at any of his trauma or processing his wounds. He was alone. And part of us have been indoctrinated into that, of like, oh, as a man, when things get hard, I need to just like grit my teeth and get through it. I don't tell anybody. And I still struggle with this. And I'll tell you, I'm in some men's groups with extremely high level guys who have been in this work for years, decades, and they still, the natural inclination, if you're over a certain age or if you've been raised a certain way, is to isolate and deal with it and handle it all on our own. But this, when I looked at this character who I could see so clearly in the public over and over and over, he was a lot of our grandfathers. He was a lot of our fathers. And I know I've given my age, so you can tell too, here in the US, like a lot of these were the men who came back from World War II. In the US, it was a lot of the men who lived through the Depression and then raised kids who, my dad's age, went to Vietnam or had that war. So it was these very, very stoic guys. It came about, Chris, because it was needed, right? I say to people who are like, well, why can't they get in touch with their feelings? Like, well, 2 generations ago, my grandfather was storming the beach at Normandy. At no point did they stop the boat like a mile offshore and say like, okay, let's just do a check-in. We want to know how everybody's feelings are. Okay, Bob, how are you? You're scared? Awesome. Well, then you can sit this one out. Stuart, you're a little bit nauseous, not a worry. We're not going to make you do this, right? It was, hey, the free world needs you guys to go die and kill and see horrible shit. And then guess what? When you come home, here's our understanding of men's mental health. It doesn't exist. Here's a bottle of alcohol. That's how you deal with this. You don't talk about it. You don't share it. You don't whatever. And what were those men supposed to do? There was no outlet in society for them to have emotions. There wasn't. It just simply didn't exist. And if you look at some of the studies of what shell shocked, like what that actually, the deepest, most severe PTSD trauma, up until very few years ago, that was viewed as just like, oh, he's weak. This is a guy that couldn't cut it in the military. This is probably like a 17, 16, 18-year-old who saw the most horrific things that a human can see and is now so severely traumatized. He's not weak. He's just been indoctrinated into something that no human should have to live through. So I saw the tail end of it, Chris. Like, I'm not saying that, most guys who you're going to run into at the pub have lived through World War II and then Vietnam and all these things. No, but that's the culture that we grew up in. And then here in the West, it was celebrated. It was celebrated with this figure of the Marlboro man, with Rambo, with the professional athlete who never cried, even though something bad happened and he showed up the next day. It was that story over and over and over again. And I think, just to be honest, men naturally are a little bit, we're good at compartmentalizing. It's one of our gifts. Why? Because we are asked to do things like go to war, to go to work, to protect our families, to die, to do dangerous jobs, to do jobs with like the highest death rate on the planet. We do those jobs. So if we were super in touch with our feelings all the time, who's going to dig ditches? Who's going to empty garbage? Who's going to go volunteer to fight fires? Who's going to put themselves in harm's way? It wouldn't work. So I think that's where the Marlboro man came from. And there are certain aspects of it that I completely agree with you. We need, right? We certainly need, because the job requirements of being a man demand them. Now, the job requirement, though, isn't 24/7, right? As a father, you can't compartmentalize when your child's crying. You actually need to be with that child. You need to support them. You need to feel them. When you're with your woman, you can't compartmentalize, right? In the middle of an emotional experience, you can't be like, "What? Stop. We're going to put that in a box and we're going to get on with things." No guy, like, trust me, anybody listening to this knows, like, yep, right. It's just like saying, calm down. It's not going to work. So we need to take the parts of it. Like, I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. I'm a huge Bruce Lee geek. And I remember him saying, like, take what works, discard what doesn't, make it uniquely your own. Right. So as opposed to pretending like, God, there's nothing valuable about stoicism, about risk taking, about being a lone wolf, about getting shit done, about grit and resilience. Those are all terrible. As opposed to saying, okay, these are some of the tools in my toolbox. But what are some of the other tools in my toolbox that are really necessary in 2022? Sensitivity, compassion, empathy, the ability to relate to somebody, the ability to actually feel what's going on in the world so that we can have an impact on it. The ability to feel what's happening with our partners, with our families, with our professional teams, like not sports teams, but like our companies. If you can't feel people, how are you going to lead them? And so we're asking men, I'm in the quote, I think, divine masculine movement sometimes. And so I was like, men need to lead, men need to lead, men need to lead. And I'm like, yeah, but men, if you can't feel, how the fuck are you going to lead? A leader without feeling is just a dictator. And we've seen what that does in the world. We're watching it in Europe right now. Right. So I think I went off on a tangent.
In the book, you say love without strength leads to something, but strength without love leads to tyranny.
Tyranny. Yeah. And that was the two juxtaposed, right? Love without strength leads to victimhood. The sensitive new age guy is a victim. He's a victim of himself. He's a victim of women. He's a victim of culture. He's a victim of not being able to get his own needs met, of not being actualized, of not being individuated, of not having the ability to actually go fucking do what he wants to do. He's collapsed. He's a pile of putty as opposed to an actual structure. One of my best teachers is a man named Dewey Freeman. And he says the definition of relationship is the ability to influence and be influenced. Right? And I don't know about you, brother, but that's how I want to walk in the world, even as a leader. Right? I don't have my team come to me and say, like, hey, I don't think this thing is working for us, and be like, oh, I'm the leader. Keep doing it anyway. I need to feel what they feel. I need to hear them. I need to listen to them. And then at the end of the day, yes, I need to make a decision. It's my company. It's my movement. But to not take in their input, it's just dumb. I don't have all the answers. I'm not like God. And so many men are walking around like that. Or they're afraid to influence.
Absolutely.
Like
I think the word influence is got a bad rap of late due to Instagram and following and it's the influencer who, oh God, he's an influencer.
Right.
But it's like we all have an influence. It's like we all have an energy, we all have a vibration that impacts everything, our surroundings. So it's like, how do you want to influence people? Yeah. Because you're going to do it one way or the other.
It's such a great point. Every single person on social media, every single one is an influencer. All of you. I don't care if you have 3 followers, you're influencing those followers. And especially if you have kids, you're an influencer. Or if you walk through a supermarket, you're an influencer. People are watching you. People are feeding off of you. And so the stoic 1950s Marlboro man is afraid to be influenced. The sensitive new age guy is afraid to influence because he doesn't want to take the risk. He doesn't want the responsibility. He doesn't want, and I remember very clearly when I said I was just in Europe, and I was leading a workshop there with my buddy Jeremy, and it was 10 days of walking the Camino. And on the very last day, we took the last 2 people who had historically been in the back the entire walk, 10 days, and we put them up front. And we took the 2 people who had been up front the entire time and we put them in the back. And one of the women who had gotten put up front said, I absolutely hate this. I don't want the responsibility of getting lost, of people being upset with me, of yada, yada. And I just said, welcome to leadership. And the people in the back who were now freaking out because they had to follow. Like, why are we stopping? Why are we looking at things as opposed to like charging ahead? It's like, this is what it's like to actually be influenced. So we can look at men in the exact same way. We want to be influential. You're going to be influential either way, as you said. And we also want to be influenced. I want to know what my woman's feeling. I want to know what you're feeling on this podcast. I want to just sit here with like either our screens off and just going, okay, here, you ask me a question ahead of time. I'm just going to give you a monologue. This is why we use video, right? So we see each other. If you're going like, then I want to ask you a question. Right? If you're laughing,
all my questions go out the window when I get into a conversation that I'm actually engaged in. You're like, okay, screw that. Like, let's
I know. I'm the same way on an interview.
Shoot the shit. I'm gonna, so you can see me better. My light's gone off. I'm just gonna touch that on. But I want to, transition slightly into men and relationships. And you said something incredibly potent, which was, damn it, now I might have to revert to my notes. But you said, I got my self-worth tied into your feelings. And I want to talk about that because that's just, I guess it speaks to the nice guy once again, which you have an amazing course on. Thank you. The nice guy. So it's for me that what spoke to me was, I'm looking for you for validation. I'm looking for you to complete me. I'm looking for you to tell me I'm okay because I don't know myself.
It's big, isn't it? Like, I'm a full-on recovering nice guy. That was my jam for 40 years of my life. And specifically remember asking my ex-wife, are you okay? Praying that the answer was yes, because that was the only way I was okay. I was so wrapped up and tied up and enmeshed into her that I didn't have the ability to be okay myself if she wasn't okay? Now that's a real skill to learn and a skill to have. And I think once a man's gone through some processes and can sit there and say, okay, you're upset with me. You're upset with this thing that just happened. You're upset with this thing that you did. And yes, I feel you. I'm not cut off. I'm not walled off. I'm not shut down, but I'm also not tripping over myself. I'm okay right now. I can deal with some conflict. I can deal with some energy in my body. I can deal with some heat. I can deal with some tension. I don't need to shut this off or collapse or numb it out, but I'm not going to put myself in her body and live there so that if she's okay, I'm okay. And that's a big one for men, Chris. And I'll tell you, it's like, it doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care how big your company is, how big your dick is, what kind of car you drive. This codependence, I've seen it in the most successful, powerful alpha men in the world. And they come home and their woman looks at them a certain way and they're like, uh-oh. And they feel terror. Oh shit, she's mad. Oh shit, she's upset. Oh shit, she's leaving. Uh-oh. And all she did was give a sideways glance. But they collapse because they have such a deep abandonment wound. Because they're not a 42-year-old CEO of a $10 billion company in that moment. They're pinging off something. And I know people may say this sounds weird, but trust me, it's real. Something that happened to them decades earlier that's been imprinted in their body. So their body's back to being a 3-year-old whose mom left or whose parents got divorced or who got, forgotten at swim practice and didn't get picked up and had to walk home or whatever it was. Or it happened at 26, when they found out they're getting divorced or that their kid died or something bad happened. We as men have to understand that just because we have dicks, trauma also affects us. Like we tend to go through life being like, well, trauma doesn't really happen to me. And I'm not even talking about big T trauma of, abuse, molestation, rape, the things that actually do happen to men that we don't talk about. I'm talking about little T trauma, getting dumped in 5th grade, getting broken up with, having your best friend move out of town and he was the only one who understood you. Like all these things are real. And so also culturally, we're pushed into enmeshment. We're pushed into codependence, right? Wasn't it in Jerry Maguire where he says like, you complete me? There's some famous movie is where the two characters are saying that to each other. And I remember, I think being in high school or college and being like, oh my God, what an incredible thing to get to say to somebody. Now I'm in a beautiful relationship for the last couple of years. She didn't fucking complete me.
Yeah, my other half.
Are you insane? No, and I don't complete her.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, that sounds awful. I'm a complete autonomous, independent human who's chosen to create a different entity with her called our relationship. Some days I'm pissed and she's fine. Some days she's sad and I'm fine. Some days I'm sad and she's fine. Some days neither of us are fine. Some days both of us are fine. But it's not completely dependent on the other. She's allowed to have her own human experience. And now what does this allow me to do as her partner? If she's sad, I get to witness her and hang out with her and hug her and hold her, but I'm not like, you better fucking get rid of this sadness because I'm not okay if you're sad. So I don't control her and manipulate her so that I feel better myself, which a lot of men do, and we don't recognize it or realize it. We think we're, quote, like helping, or we're just like, hey, stop that. That's not anything to be upset about. That's dumb. We minimize it. We dismiss it, which doesn't help. I mean, imagine if that was happening to you. Like, hey, I'm really upset. This thing happened. I was like, well, that's dumb. Like, that doesn't feel good. I wouldn't want a guy to say, I wouldn't want anybody to say that to me. Like, wait a minute, really? It's not dumb. It's real. My dog died, or my dad's sick, or, like my business just took a big hit and I'm afraid for my future. Those are real things.
So much unhealthy communication is normalized. And it's because of that normalization of things, we feel like we're the ones with the problem, or like we're the only one. In that perfect example, when you're like, okay, that doesn't feel good, but it's so common to just hear that from someone who's like, oh, don't be dumb, like, and it's it's just so normalized. We have to like wake up to this, and that's what this work's really about. I think the biggest thing for me is how I can be of service is speaking to that piece on trauma. Like we don't live our pasts, we project our pasts into now, right? It's really like we live our past, like in the day. And I take any opportunity I can to speak to that, because we can understand how emotions come up, how to channel them, all the stuff I've spoken about before. But unless we really go back and like understand what the origin story of these triggers are, we're not going to thrive, and we're not going to be able to rewrite the story for ourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Huge. Yeah, man. Just something come up for me then. It's getting cheated on, like so common in our culture for like just again, unhealthy communication in relationships, not knowing where you're at, not speaking to your needs to be met, and having this kind of gray area with another person. And then getting what we say cheated on. It's like it impacts us, and then in every relationship we're fearful. Take that as an example. What would your advice be to someone who, or how would you kind of guide someone through like trusting again? I think in the book, Oscar Wilde, is it like the best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust them?
Trust them, yeah. I think there's a couple ways to approach this. Is one, actually acknowledge that it happened and that it hurt and it was a betrayal, and that you have been wounded in a certain way. Like if I cut my pinky off and I just go around pretending that it didn't happen, it doesn't help. So I have to acknowledge that it happens. And a lot of people don't want to hear this, but men especially, there are people who can guide you through that. They're called therapists. They're called counselors. They're called coaches. They will help you get from A to B. They're not going to sew my pinky back on and make it 100% the way it was before. But then here's what I get to do in my next relationship. This is called honest communication. I get to tell my partner, hey, I don't have a pinky. And so when you ask me to hold things with my left hand, it's going to make me nervous. So here's what I need from you to help me feel okay. You know, my ex cheated on me, and it happened on a Sunday morning. And I walked in the house and I found her. I'm just making this up. This didn't happen to me. Yeah. So I just need you to know that on Sunday mornings, I may be a little bit more on edge. And if I'm walking into the house and I can't find you really quick, I may be just a little bit anxious. And so I'm not asking you to coddle me. I'm not asking you to make me okay. I'm not asking you to wake up every Sunday morning and be like, hey, it's me. It's Sunday morning, not cheating on you. By the way, you can go outside and come back in. I'll be right there in the front door. Be like, hey, it's me right here, not cheating on you. But it's that level of honesty where they can actually say, I just need you to understand this. Right? It would really help me if you could understand this. Now, if you have a partner that hears that and is like, that's dumb, get over it. There's a really big red flag that that's not a very conscious partner, and that they're not honoring you as a whole human. They want the parts of you that are clean. They want the parts of you that are friendly. They want the parts of you that are happy. No, that you get the whole human when you're in a relationship with someone. But I would say it's incumbent upon you to say to your partner, hey, this is what happened to me. This is what I'm going to be sticky around. Like, we need to give each other our user manuals. Both my current partner and I are divorced. So yeah, we've been through some shit. So all the time we've been dating, especially in the beginning, it was, hey, what happened? I want to know what happened. We don't talk about this every night at dinner, but I need to know that if you know, she came home with the wrong groceries and her ex yelled and screamed at her and punched a hole in the fridge, that I just need to be a little more sensitive if she's anxious coming home from the grocery store. Right. And if my ex-wife literally one morning just got up and left and never came back. So I had to tell her that and say, hey, if I message you and I don't hear back from you in like 8 hours, I'm going to feel like something's off. And so you may get a couple messages from me like, hey, just check in with me. I know you may be busy, but just ping me. Let me know you're okay. Right. And this is true. My ex left right after the holidays. So I get a little bit squirrely around the holidays, and I just may be a little bit short. I may be a little bit like temperamental or uncomfortable. And so I had to tell her that. So she doesn't think I'm a fucking psychopath at Christmas and not understand why, like, wow, you're sweating sitting under the Christmas tree. And I'm like, I know, because 7 days from now, something bad's going to happen. Right. Like, so it's an invitation for her to better understand me. And it's an invitation for me to better understand her, because we've made this deal that we're going to be partners. So no different than a business, no different than a sport. I want to know my partner's strengths and weaknesses, right? If you and I are on the same football team or soccer team, what do we call it here, and I know you're not good with your left foot, then you got to tell me that, so I stop passing shit to your left. Like, it makes perfect sense in that context to men, but then we're like, hey, did you tell your ex that, you got cheated on, so you may be a little sensitive? And they're like, no, that's dumb. Well, that's your left foot, brother. Help her out, help each other out. I think it just takes a little vulnerability, Chris. Like, I didn't want to sit down, on our fourth date and say, hey, by the way, my ex-wife just left me one day, and so I have this challenge. It doesn't rule my life. It doesn't run my life. It's not my identity, but I can't pretend that it didn't happen. And here I'm telling it to you so that you also get to decide whether you want to work with me on it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gives them permission to understand that for themselves. I think
to influence me and be influenced by me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and knowing what you need with that, because it's one thing telling someone something, but it's another thing, another level is what do you need from it, because they'll just start guessing. Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. That was beautiful. Just conscious of time. I mean, sure. I'd love, talk to you all morning, evening. So cock is your medicine. Let's dive into that. Sure. Your book does really, it surprised me, it shocked me. And I think you invited that in, you wanted that. And also, just touching on something we said earlier, you really invited in the challenge as well. So that must have been hard for you, but it's you've given it, I feel like you've given it everything. You've really just asked for that, and just no holds barred. It's just, I'm all in. Give me what you've got, because I'm going to learn from it, or whatever it is. You must have had a team of people just ready for those emails. What was it you under the quilt?
Yeah, I've gotten some interesting ones, Chris. At this point now, they don't bug me. But yeah, there was a lot of negative reaction to the brashness of the book, but I didn't want it to be brash for brash's sake. I wanted it to be brash to cut through. And again, if we talk about what is masculine energy, it's penetrative. I needed this book to slice right through all the cultural bullshit and say things in a way that would stop men in their tracks and make them go, okay, I want to know more about this. And so that chapter, your cock is medicine, it literally came from a quote where I had Jamie Thompson on, who I actually just interviewed a couple of days ago, an amazing interview, to have her back on. And she was in a call with me and all the guys in the Uncivilized Nation, talking about sexuality, talking about how sexuality has the ability to heal people if it's done in a conscious way with brilliant communication. But it has this potential to activate parts of your life that are inactive, to allow you to express yourself outside of the bedroom in ways you may not have been able to by expressing yourself in the bedroom, by allowing your partner, man or woman, to experience life in a deeper, richer way outside of the bedroom by what goes on in the bedroom. So she gives us this whole 90-minute talk. And at the end of it just says, hey, gentlemen, I just want you to know your cock is medicine. And there was about 50 jaws that hit the floor, right? Like, and again, this is right after Me Too, where your cock is a weapon. Sex is dangerous. Masculine strength or masculine sexuality is toxic. And so I wanted men to realize and to really come to understand the power of our sexuality. not in the like, man, this is so overwhelming, I just want to fuck everything that moves power, but that there is this whole realm of experience that is enlivening, enlightening, expansive, just like plant medicine, and healing, and fucking fun. That we are demonizing. It's like we're taking a whole category. This is like a perfect analogy to psychedelics and plant medicine, which are up until very recently were like the devil's tool and class A narcotic here in the US. You go to jail for 100 years if you have a tab of acid. And now suddenly people are realizing, wow, this is really potent. This will really change the way I think and act outside of the use of the substance. And so I say the same thing for sexuality, right? How many of us are walking around with sexual shame or sexual guilt or some kind of sexual wound? Most people.
Yeah.
Right? Most men, especially women, but also men, we get shamed, we get disappointed, we get, a girlfriend laughed at us because we came too quick, or they said your cock is small, or you had an erection when you weren't, is inappropriate, or your parents demonized sexuality, or God forbid you came up in one of the churches that was like all sex is bad except procreation, even though our priests are often doing shit to little boy, but that's a whole nother conversation. So we all carry this. And then suddenly there's this liberation of like, wow, I'm a sexual being. My sexuality isn't dangerous if it's got consciousness intertwined with it. Just that thought alone is a game changer from, oh, this is dangerous, this is bad, this needs to happen in the back rooms. I'm just going to be sticking with porn because I can't ever tell my partner that I want to fuck her a certain way. And I certainly can't allow her to want to be fucked a certain way, because then she's a slut, or then she's a whore, or then she's this. And oh, by the way, she's not even allowed to have her own sexual expression, because then she's impure. And I can't ask if she's ever had sex before me, even though she's 35 and I'm not a virgin. But gosh, that'd be terrible to think about. So there's all of this nonsense wrapped up in sexuality, just like there's all of this nonsense wrapped up in psychedelics and plant medicines and alternative medicine. That I wanted guys to just pause for a moment and say, okay, I need to look into this. I need to look into Tantra. I want to look into power dynamics. I want to look into kink. But you know what the first step is? I need to actually probably look into therapy. Because when I was a junior in high school and I had sex with Susie Johnson, and the next day she told all of her friends that I came in 5 seconds because I was so excited. And then that rumor got spread all over the high school and everybody calls me 5-second Traver. And now I'm terrified of having sex with women. So I jerk off to porn 4 times a day, right? You see that pattern? But by the way, I can't go to my buddies and be like, hey man, I'm jerking off a lot. And I think it has to do when Susie Johnson said it, they're not going to be like, well, come have a seat. Tell me more about your feelings. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I too got teased by Susie. That's not the conversation that most dudes sit down and like crack a cold one and be like, so tell me about your sexual shame. We just don't do it. What do you guys want to talk about today? Football or sexual shame? We just don't do it.
It's the spaces, isn't it? It's the spaces for these things. And as
there's definitely appropriate spaces. And I don't recommend going down to the bar tonight and getting a pint and be like, so fellas, yeah, how much we jerking off?
That'll surprise you though too. It's like we hold all this in and we create our own tumultuous narratives around it, and because we sit with it and we ruminate, and it perpetuates the feelings when we don't express it. And like other parts of us, more unconscious, like hold those emotions in, and then it just gets wrapped up and warped. But the spaces that we need for these, like that was one potent thing that I realized was just I need to create this space, because it's not here, it's not there, and it needs to happen. Like it's the space for healing needs to happen, space for these conversations, and that's what it's about for me. And then just to see what comes up, just be present to what comes up, and just I'll learn through that experience. I don't need to go off and do a course about how to hold space for sexual shame. It's like I have my own, I'll bring that, and then we'll talk about it, and I'll be the first one on the dance floor, and we'll it's okay. Like we'll be in this space together. And we'll learn through a process. Yeah, man. Yeah.
We'll learn together as men, Chris.
Yeah.
Like it's just like we're missing the fact that we're all on the same team. We miss that of like, oh, you and I are very similar, right? We don't have, there aren't 50,000 problems or challenges that men have. There's like 7. And each one of those may have some different offshoots. But after working with men for years now, it's not like, wow, you're the one guy who's got some discipline, like doesn't have a connection with his father, feels like he doesn't live up to that, his father's shadow, and so he drinks too much. You're the only guy I've ever met on the entire planet who has that. You're the only guy I've ever met whose mom left and now you have issues with women. No, we all have the same fucking problems. The problem is we don't talk about them. We don't have space for them. We don't have these conscious containers where we can say, you too? Everybody here has a little bit of trouble with alcohol? Holy shit, I thought I was the only one. Everybody here has a little bit of problem, a challenge with porn? I thought I was the only one. Really? There's like 7 billion Pornhub users. You thought you were the only dude? But that's somewhere in our male psyche. We're like, I'm the only guy on Pornhub. I'm the only guy on Pornhub.
Me, what is going on?
Right. It's I'm the only computer in all of the Western world that has Pornhub on it, right? Somehow, like our brains, I think it goes back to the 1950s Marlboro Man, which we opened with, of we isolate and we believe that we're the only one, and therefore, who am I to share my problem with you? Because you won't understand it. But then and I know once you actually do share it, you realize, oh, it almost takes the specialness out of it. It's like, oh, I'm not that special. I drank too much. I looked at too much porn. My wife left me. Oh, I'm pretty standard. That's kind of normal shit for a lot of people. Or your shit may be a different flavor of that, but it's same normal. And once we drop the facade that nothing bad's ever happened to me and I just may have some weird habits, and actually start diving into what's real, that's when we heal. And that's when the whole culture and the society heals. And we stop beating the shit out of women. We stop shooting up schools. We stop drinking ourselves to death. We stop doing all of these things that we claim that we want to stop. But we have to start doing that by addressing the root, as opposed to just seeing who can yell the loudest about the branch.
Yeah, powerful. I think it can get really heady for people, for us men who love to problem solve and live in that space a lot of the time, because we feel like that's what's important. But speaking to those 7 things, whatever they are for you, it's like simplifying those things, and then there's things that shoot off those, of course, but like starting with those primary emotions like anger. What is this bringing? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it joy? Is it fear? And just which one is it? And then like understanding it more and just tapping in a bit more simpler. Would you be able to guide us through something, perhaps?
Sure.
Not for those that are driving, but in the right space.
I always say, unless you're driving or operating heavy machinery, please don't do this. But other than that, please close your eyes.
Yes.
And put your feet flat on the floor. Drop your shoulders down, relax your jaw. Feel into your body. Feel where your clothing meets your skin, where your butt meets whatever you're sitting on, where your bottoms of your feet. See if you can feel the very place where the bottoms of your feet meet the floor, or the sock that you're wearing. And then take a breath. Take one hand and place it on your stomach. One hand and place it on your heart. And feel the difference of these 2 areas. Feel the power in your stomach, the strength that you have as a man. the ability to fuck shit up, to build things, to penetrate, to impregnate, to change the world, to change your world, your will, your potency. Feel that. Let it move you, let it rock you, let it disturb you as to how much power you actually have. And then take another breath and feel your beautiful heart. This area in your chest that you may be unfamiliar with, or you may be a little bit afraid of, maybe foreign to you. Feel the potential for compassion, for empathy, for kindness, for caring, for love. The area that recognizes beauty and sweetness and tenderness. These brilliant things about being a man. Now feel these two energies connect. The power in your stomach, the kindness in your heart, the potency, the compassion. Feel how they're teammates, they're brothers, they're partners, how they want to work together, how they want you to have them work together, how they want you to allow both of them equally. And promise yourself not to separate them, not to segregate them, but to allow them to exist in your body at all time, and to recognize that at any moment, on any day, in any situation, with just one breath, you have full access to both of these areas and full access to them working in synergy and harmony together. And with these next 3 breaths, just own fully the complexity and the fullness that is you as a man. And don't diminish either end of the spectrum, but allow all of you to be present and allow all of you to be welcome. And let's take one last breath together. Let's breathe in and breathe out. And slowly begin to blink your eyes open. You can drop your hands, come back into your body, come back into the room, and come back into your beautiful life.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing. I felt a lot of tension. There was so much tension in the gut, and that so much power, though, so much energy there, just wrapped up, just and in the heart space as well. Just there was so much locked energy that just could be let go. You know? Amazing, man. Where can people find you?
manuncivilized.com. That works. manuncivilized.com/the book. If you want to get a hold of the book, it's also on Amazon, Audible. You can DM me if you love this episode. If you have questions, at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm on Instagram. I also have a podcast, the Uncivilized Podcast, but I'm not hard to find. If you just put Uncivilized anywhere, I tend to show up. And I'd love to hear from your listeners. So if anything of this podcast impacted you or hit you or shifted you, please just shoot me a message. I love to talk to people after interviews like this.
Amazing. Thank you for inviting that in. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for, just
my pleasure, brother.
being in flow and just being present. It was amazing. And just thank you for all the work you're doing. I mean, I don't need to be any, the one to tell you this. I'm sure many do, but it's really important work, man. And it's really, it's just, I feel it now or never how vital this is for us men.
For sure.
It really is profound.
Thank you.
And a path that you're inviting everyone and challenging everyone to take on, because it does need that. It needs that invitation, but the way that you do it is caring but daring.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And there's so much courage in that, man. Amazing.
Thank you. And I'll be back over on your side of the pond next summer. Looking forward to doing a UK gathering.
Yeah, let's hang out. I'll definitely be up for that.
Thank you.
Cool, man. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure, brother. Have a great rest of your night.